Hey you guys, this is Erico and I am back again. On a sour note, this is a case that's been going on in Japanese history for a while. It's been years. So many journalists, so many different people have spoken out about this and how it's so unjust. Just this man had a case back in the 60s. And for multiple accounts, there have been attempts at retrials for this man because he was put on death row. He originally was a famous boxer in the 60s, and he was accused of killing this miso soup executive, which he apparently had worked under. He killed him as well as his whole family. It was 4 people in total. And they pinned him as the murderer.
Iwao Hakamada has been on death row in Japan since 1966 after being convicted of a quadruple murder. 47 years later, and he's still waiting to be hanged. His sister Hideko visits every month, but he now refuses to see her or anyone else. She says spending nearly half a century waiting to die has driven him mad.
And they had evidence, but it was weird because they took him in for questioning. They questioned him and got a confession out of him. He was sent to court, trialed for death. But what was really weird and confusing was that this evidence came out maybe about, months after they got a confession, and they used it to put him away. But that never happens. Where was this evidence before? They found bloodstained clothing in a miso tank. And wait a minute. They had been in this tank for about 14 months. And so cops and prosecutors found it. They said they were his clothes. They said that he admitted they were his clothes. So they put this man away without blinking an eye, without questioning, without really looking through the evidence. And so he sat behind bars in solitary confinement for 35 years. He is now 87 years old. And had his sister not believed in his character and in who he was as a person, he would still be in there. His sister fought. She was constantly at the courthouse, constantly coming forward and saying, I want a retrial. First time she tried to, Supreme Court said no. Second time, tried again. She was like, something is not right with his confession and with the evidence, and I want a deeper inspection into everything. And she kept pushing, she kept talking to the media. And finally, they said, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and we're going to give a retrial. And she fought. First retrial, that attempt that she tried was 2008, then they tried again in 2014, and now finally it went to the high court, and they decided to really look into everything, especially the evidence, because it was so strange that they found this evidence after he was taken into custody and had confessed. And who does that? Normally, they don't do that. I don't care where you are in the world. Normally, they need the evidence to actually take you in to put you in jail. So it was seeming more and more like this poor man was set up just because he was a boxer, just because he had a kind of a connection to the victims. So what they did was they started looking to the articles of clothing, and they found that it was impossible for these clothing to have blood stains on it and for the color of the stains to still be such a bright red. They were saying if it was in the miso soup, it would have turned a darker brown. It wouldn't have been that same red that they saw in the photos. And so they asked that there was more experiments, because the prosecution was coming out and saying that, oh no, it was red when we pulled it out of the tank, and that's how it was supposed to look. But then they were looking at the pictures and they're like, that's not possible. It would be an actual darker color. So then they started doing experiments, and even with the experiments, what they did, they found that basically the cops who were on this case all the way back then were telling on themselves, because someone planted that evidence. It didn't make any sense. The dots were not connecting. The lines were not adding up to the full picture of what they were trying to convey. It was becoming more likely that this evidence had nothing to do with this man, or even with the murder case, and that it was planted. And then they started to look into his confession. So they took this man into custody and held him for 12 hours, picking and probing at this man. And they do this to a lot of people. They will force a confession out of you. They will mess with your mind. They will have you in a room where there's no windows. You cannot eat. You cannot go to the bathroom. And they will pick with you. They will try to force you to say things that you would never say otherwise. And they got a confession out of this poor man. And he said, finally, I did it. It was me. The clothes were mine. I stabbed this family to death. The blood on the clothes is mine. I put the clothes in the tank and hid them. But then they found out that this confession was actually coached out of him. And that it was not making any sense, because he said in his confession that he was wearing pajamas. But the articles of clothing that were found weren't pajamas, and there was no pajamas in the clothing. So the judge and everyone's like, once again, it's not making a lot of sense. And before, the judicial system in the high court did not want to open up this case again, because they knew that it would make the overall system look bad and uncover the problems and the corruption that's just in the criminal justice system in general. And this shows you guys that it has nothing to do with culture you're in, what place in the world you're in, that there is corruption in the system everywhere. They do it to every race, and they will try to pin something on you just because it's convenient for them. What scares me about this too is that they still don't know who actually killed this family. He took the fall for this crime for years. Went through health issues, mental issues. His sister had to eventually fight to pull him out. They now live together. He is living out his days that he has remaining on this earth, but they took most of this man's life away over flimsy evidence. Evidence that they didn't even know was actually good enough to put him away. There was no actual truth in this evidence. They just ran with it. Just because some prosecutors, some cops came and said, look, here it is. Just because they felt he's a boxer and he knew this man, obviously he did it. So meanwhile, for 35 years, the real culprit, whether it was actually a police officer, whoever, is still out there free. Is that not troubling? We got a problem here. We got a serious problem. This man was innocent. Innocent. And he still would have been in jail had it not been for his sister's unwavering faith in him. She never gave up hope. And I'm happy that it shows footage of her fighting, and that even though I don't believe he's really in his right mind anymore, that it showed that, she was strong enough to go and say, no, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm not gonna stop fighting until he's out. Because she knew deep down in her soul that he did not do this. I'm happy that there are a lot of people that have shed light on this case, and there's been constant updates with this case, because it shows you, especially looking at this from me being a black man and seeing how the judicial system has treated black men, black people, black bodies, and how also this constantly has been a reoccurring theme. It's good to know that at least if we can't depend on the system, that we can depend on people who have faith, who have good intentions, good hearts, to fight, to let their voices be heard, to say, no matter who it is, this is wrong. Because no one deserves to have their life taken away like this for something that they didn't do. Just them either being in the wrong place at the wrong time or just being connected to somebody. And for this to have taken so much time, you guys, for them to look into this, for them to reject the retrial, for them to go through this long drawn out process of it going to the Supreme Court, going to the court in the prefecture that they lived in, going to the high court, going all around, up and down and around we go, until finally someone had enough heart and common sense and a conscience to be like, okay, we're really going to actually look into this. And what they found was that it was all a bust. So now they're like, back then somebody planted this. It could have been the police force. The police force could have killed this family. It could have been someone who knew the police force, that was connected to them, that said, I want you to cover this up. Yeah, let the boxer take the fall for it. We got some evil people in this world. We got some evil stuff going on in this world. And I think it's important that we continue to shed light on topics like these and raise our voices and give our opinions. And also, if you see something being done that's wrong, that you definitely speak up and that you definitely talk about it, report it. Tell someone who can help you report it. Because you never know. Even an act like that might be saving someone's life in the long run. So you guys, this is a lot to think about. Follow my social media, mostly my Instagram. Also have a blog in East Asian Pop Culture. The link is always down in the description box below. And remember, be real, stay real, live in the real. And I will always be back. Thank you guys for watching. Put your opinions below. Look into this more. How do you feel? Tell me below. I'd love to hear from you.